minute.
Test 1, 2, we good?
Could you just make sure that everybody has like pens and index cards?
Should I go? Would you do me a favor and
Tell him, Sean? What do you want me to say? 2 minute?
Yeah.
2 minute warning? How about 1 minute?
1 minute because we're
1 minute. 1 minute.
Matthew, if you turn the wash lights off.
I asked him to do that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for that because there you go. Right immediately as we talked about it. We begin the presentation in 1 minute. You're welcome to come in this shirt.
They didn't tell me they had pizza. What? Nobody told me they had pizza. You're gonna save me a piece, right? Save me a piece?
We're going to go ahead and get started. Everybody should have an index card or two and a pen. And Sean is walking around trying to make sure everybody does. So raise your hand if you haven't gotten your index card or your pen. Sean, we need some in the back and over here. Sean,
Come on
in the
make
back
yourself
over here.
comfortable.
Okay, thank you.
Come on in. 30 seconds. Go.
Take a seat, set a spell.
You want to pen too?
Still can see it okay?
All right, we'll just give everybody a minute to get settled. Make sure as you're coming in, you grab an index card and a pen. If you don't have an index card and a pen, if you can just raise your hand, we'll get some to you.
Write down your favorite song. Mary Kate's going to sing it for you at the end.
That's Friday night happy
What?
hour.
Well, we've been practicing, but she's really the voice.
He's really the backup, you know.
She's the voice.
Actually,
She's
Sean will
the
bring you
voice.
some. Just raise your hand. Sean? Sean, we need index cards. If you don't have an index card yet, raise your hand. We'll get some to you. Up here. Thank you.
Everybody got an index?
All right.
Pen?
We're going to go ahead and get started. Again, if you don't have your index cards, raise your hand. We want to get some feedback from you, give you multiple ways to do that. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for staying late. I know it's a beautiful day out. It would have been easier if it looked like yesterday today for this, but we'll take the glorious weather. I'm Mary Kay Doherty, and I'm co-chair of the Facilities Dream Team.
And I'm Hop
here.
Hopkins, the other co-chair.
Yes, and Hop is also the winningest softball coach in Calvary history, which is what he really likes. He really likes to be known for that. Thank you. Can you give that to Nancy so that she can pass them out as more people come
Very
in?
proud of the softball.
So what we'd also like to do, we are part of a bigger team, and we'd like people from the Facilities Dream Team who are here to just stand so you can see who they are. They'll be answering questions after this presentation. Hop and I are going out. And also we're missing, I think Erin Parsons is also part of the team, and she's out of town today, so she couldn't be here. So we're here to share with you, and we wanted to start with our mission, which is to be a church where faith is fostered, community is cherished, and Christ's love thrives.
And our vision is God's grace, love, and hope is embodied here and in the world.
And the reason we wanted to share these first, and you hear these often, I think one of the great things about this vision and mission is that we really use them in all of our meetings and in our worships, is that this has been a guiding light for us as we have had our discussions over the last couple of years. because we really want to be able to embody both this mission and reach the vision.
So agenda, why are we here? Let me just start by saying, I've always believed that, you can't hear?
But yeah, a little closer mic.
How are we good? Can we turn it up a bit?
Do you want to raise it up?
I can. Here we go. How we doing, Jim?
Is that better?
My sound engineer, my guitar playing buddy. So folks, I've always believed that no matter where you are, what you're doing, whether it's any kind of relationship, personal relationship, professional relationship, certainly in any kind of emergency situation, the key to success is effective and efficient communications. So that's why we're here today. We're here to talk about the facility, the Dream Team background, some conceptual options of what we're looking at for the complex, if you will, and also want to talk about the next steps. You'll see a standard theme throughout this whole presentation that it's going to kind of look at, here's where we were as a complex, a church complex, here's where we are, and how we want to look into the future. And while we take a peek into the future, what we need, and Mary Kate's going to explain it here in a minute, what we need is your input. We need that healthy communication link with you and the facilities Dream Team.
Okay. So this is really the beginning of a discussion, and it's going to be a very long discussion, but don't worry, we're going to get you out of here within an hour today. The discussion is going to go actually probably for a couple years before we really know, and that's really important. We're on the verge of, we've gathered some information, we've gathered some options. We have a lot of discussing and a lot of planning to do, so we don't want anybody to leave here thinking that next week they're going to start seeing, construction and, yellow tape showing up around the sanctuary, because that is not going to be happening. This is really a beginning of a very long discussion. And to start that discussion, we're actually going to use a couple things today because we really want to get your initial input. So one of the things, if you have a cell phone, you can go to your Google and you can type in www.menti.com, and you should get a screen that looks like this, and we'll give you a code in a little bit that you'll be able to put in. And this way, we're going to be able to actually survey you today. So we'll get some input on a couple of things that we're just kind of curious about. We've also given out index cards, and if you don't have index cards or a pen, if you could raise your hand and Nancy will get them to you. We want to make sure if you want to write down questions or comments or things you want us to know. Nancy, we've got some back here. Or things you want to know, we're going to try to get to as many questions today as possible, but we really do we know some people have their children next door and they have a finite timeline, so we want to make sure that we get through the presentation today. We're going to answer as many questions and give you some time to discuss and share with us, but we need to get through our presentations, and we'll stay later, and also the cards enable you. Some people may not want to ask their question out loud. This is a way you can just put it down and we'll get it. All right. So we want to talk about today's facility.
Go ahead, the next slide. How many Saturday Night Live fans do we have here? Awesome, awesome. For those of us that are real Saturday Night Live fans, you'll remember Mike Myers.
That's not real, it's old. Old Saturday, never mind, go ahead.
Okay, old Saturday Night Live fans. You'll remember Mike Myers. One of his favorite skits, and one of mine, was when Linda Richmond, Coffee Talk. Remember that? And at a certain time during the skit, Mike Myers or Linda Richmond would say, I'm going to give you a subject. I want you to talk amongst yourselves. So this is where you're going to talk amongst yourselves. Talk to the neighbor next to you, either side, and share a couple things amongst yourselves, what you like about this complex, and then a couple things that you'd like to see changed or revised or redone. So just take a couple minutes and talk amongst yourselves.
What do you love about the buildings, and what challenges do you see?
And it just doesn't have to be the sanctuary. It can be Harris Hall, Skidmore.
Okay, if we could come back to the larger discussion. I know you guys could probably chat all day, but if we could wrap up your
Okay.
current thought
Time's up.
and come back. All right, so we
Time's up.
asked you to cover 2 questions, and we can't take all the answers, but we'd love to hear one or two from one or two of you. We'd love to hear a couple things you love about the facility. So you're getting pointed at from behind. She voluntold you.
Well, I was saying that this space is the most beautiful space for worship, I feel. These windows make such a big statement.
Yeah.
And are so connected to inside and outside, the light that goes through them and the images and the scale of them. It's just so perfect.
Wonderful. So I'm just going to repeat it so everybody can hear. The sanctuary is a wonderful place to worship, and the windows, and we've talked about these windows a lot. They bring the inside light in. They're just beautiful and are wonderful to have.
How about another positive? What you got, buddy?
I do 2.
You got 2? Wow. Hold on. I want everybody to hear you.
The first one is like that the children's space is really far away. Like in other churches I went to, sometimes when it's closer, you'll hear them crying a lot and it'll kind of disrupt the whole class. And it's so far away that if they're crying, like they're screaming at the top of their lungs, you won't even hear them.
So I guess that's a good thing?
That's a good thing. The kids are far away.
Okay.
Okay?
You said you had 2?
Oh, yeah, and
Different
there's
perspectives.
There's generally just a lot of space everywhere. So yeah.
A lot of space, and we're going to talk
Nice.
about a lot of space. All right, who's got a little down
One
arrow?
more. Let's do one more good thing.
Oh, one more good one? Hold on,
Oh, you
Grace.
want a challenge? Do you have a challenge? Okay, we'll skip to the challenges.
All right,
Oh, over here.
I need the exercise. Hold on, Grace.
Thank you. So our team said that the stove in the kitchen will not get rid of it, I'm just saying, renovate. The
Yeah.
other thing is space. I know when we had fundraisers or giving gift for Afghan, we didn't have enough space in the basement when I was singing in the choir. So more space for storage where you don't see the donations.
Great.
Okay, good one.
There's one back here.
Anybody else?
I also have 2. That everything, and that just everyone's, everything is on a completely different height elevation than everything else. And 2 parking.
Yes. There are 14 or 15 different levels of the church buildings. That confuses some people, but I think there's one all the way in the
One
back,
more.
huh?
Way back.
Okay, and this will be our last one, and we're going to move on, not because we don't want to hear from you, but because we want to make sure we share with you. And please, if you have something, write it on the index cards, and we'll collect all of them at the end.
So for us, kind of spinning off the last comment there with the different levels, I love that this place is accessible for friends like ours here. But I know I've seen parents too with the baby car seats, and I know it with my children, it's very tricky with carrying the diaper bag and the baby, all the apparatus. So having a ramp, or probably not an elevator financially, but if somehow eventually a ramp can go to the fellowship hall, I think more families and more elderly people would feel more included.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks.
All right.
So why are we here? You know, from my perspective, and probably the biggest reason that I joined this church was the fact that, and it took me a few weeks to believe it, but everybody I talked to was very warm and welcoming and just very sincere. And I think that is such a wonderful thing for a congregation, for a church to be able to say. I can also say that, and I'm going to brag about the softball team here just for a minute. Almost every game that we play, almost every game, at the end when we shake the other team's hand, win or lose, they always compliment about what great sports we are, and our sportsmanship, was throughout the games that we played. It is the most often and positive comment that I hear about anything associated with Calvary United Methodist Church. So in this next century of faith and friendship, we need to ask ourselves, how will our facilities carry on and sustain that spirit for the next 100 years. All right, the 50s and the 60s, here we go. Now I'm going to date myself. 50s and 60s were two awesome decades. Number one, that's where I learned how to play baseball and all the other sports. And the latter part of the 60s, I spent running around trying to convince Marty to spend the rest of her life with me. It worked. It worked. But let's think about what was happening back then here. Our trustees were amazing visionaries. Look what they gave us. Look what they did for us. They bought up properties on this entire block. And what they did is ensure that our financial future was going to be rock solid. Certainly their thoughtfulness and stewardship is extended today. Here we are, you know, how many years later? So again, as we celebrate a century of faith and fellowship here at Calvary, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to reinvest? And now it's our turn to reinvest. These facilities on this complex are in dire need of work. There's a lot of money. Mary Kate's going to talk about a lot of money that goes into caring for these facilities year in and year out. But it's, like I said, it's our time to reinvest, our turn to reinvest, and ensure that this, 100 years from now, that somebody else will be standing there talking about the softball team, Mike Myers, and what they did in, I don't know, 2000. Anyhow.
Great. So how many of you were here in 2018, 2019 timeframe? Okay, good. So some of you, this will be a review. For some of you, this is new. In 2018, 2019, we did it's a Methodist kind of study. It's called Next Level Innovations. And what that does is we invited someone from another church to come in, and they talked to us. They helped us assess kind of where we were as a congregation. And then they, after lots of surveys, lots of discussions, they wrote a report. And there were 4 parts of the report, and it's interesting because we finished the other 3 parts. The first one was, one of them was vision and mission, which you see and hear a lot. One of them was around communications. That's where we got our updated, beautiful branding, I think, came from that. And then we also did mission, so we could upgrade our missions. The 4th part was, one of the things that came up in every group that they talked about was facilities. And we kind of saved that to the last because we thought it would be good to put the other pieces in place. And the facilities, as I said before, it's a really long, many-year conversation. So we actually became, we were chartered, I guess, by that NLI report. Now, another thing that was happening right around the 2000s, early, I guess it was 2020, is the trustees were starting to notice, you know, we have older buildings, and we're going to share all of the buildings that we own on this block. I know Hop kind of said we own some properties, and you're kind of going, what are they? We're going to share your picture in a minute. We have multiple rental houses that are aging. We have these facilities that are aging. And so they wanted to know, what is it going to cost long term just to maintain? And this isn't talking about like cutting the yard or fixing an occasional. This is like really the heavy duty maintenance of roofs and air conditioners and all those things that you have to just update. Not making these better, different, not fixing some of the issues that you guys mentioned earlier, but just to maintain. To maintain, they issued or asked for a report, so we paid someone to do this. To maintain the 3 church buildings and the property around it, the parking lot and all, is a little over $2 million between now and 2015. So we're going to spend a chunk of money just to maintain, which is fine. You own a house, you maintain it, right? That's what we have to do with these properties. To maintain all of the properties that we own on this block, it would be about $5 million. So we just want to, that's where we are right now. We have aging buildings that we are going to have to invest in just to keep them functional. So we wanted to mention that.
And of course, that's just what we know now.
Yeah.
And as we move on into the future, who knows what these issues may get worse, or we may discover more issues with the properties and this complex that we've come to know and love.
Right. So you all, I asked you, what were some of the challenges and the concerns that you see? We've actually talked to a lot of people over the last couple of years, have done surveys. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But there's quite a few. Confusing flow, how to get places. We need, people want updated kitchens. Some of it's with the building themselves, not through the fault, but at the time they built the buildings, they used things like asbestos. They used all these things that kind of make it hard for us to renovate because we have to take actions to make sure that we mitigate the spread of that. Expensive HVAC, old, outdated things. We did a couple years ago replace some of the windows, so we did good there. Our parking is a little limited, to say the least. We know people have tried to come to church and they've not been able to find parking, or they're parking way far away, so we know that that's an issue. One of the other things that is an issue is, this is what the architect told us when we we'll talk about the architect in a minute too. We had him come and kind of do an assessment of the buildings to see what they thought was, maintainable and functionable. When you look at our buildings, and part of it's just because of the way we have joined, and added on, over 30% of our space is used to get from place A to B. We have a lot of hallways. If the average build, when you're going to build, it's 7%. So we're using a lot of space just to get from place to B. The other thing is we have to heat and air condition and maintain all of those spaces. So it's really not efficient with the current build that we have. So we just, again, what we're trying to do is share what we've learned and give you some facts so that you can think about them. So we are now going to go to a survey. And so we want you to go back to your phone. Hop, you can talk with them.
This is where you enter the code and you get a chance to vote.
And the code is 56651474, and I'll have it up again in a minute. Ooh, some people have already voted. So as you vote, you'll see, you put the code in and you can select it and you will see.
What's the code again?
56651474. Great, we have some people who are unsure. That I love to see that, because we're sometimes unsure too. Oh,
We got some trigger fingers here, itchy trigger fingers here. Boy, you guys are fast.
I see the code's getting cut off by the. Okay, the code is 56651474. The good thing is once you have it in, then you're done. And I'm going to go back to the survey. So does everybody see the code? All right. So here's our survey. We're going to go ahead and Calvary needs to improve its facilities. 47% strongly agree, 35% agree, 12% are unsure, and 6% disagree. So good data for us to have, and we're going to keep talking and voting. So we're going to go back to our presentation.
Can you give us that code again?
Yes.
56651474.
56651474. And what I'll do is I'll leave it on that survey, so if you didn't get the code in, you can put it in now and vote. Again, we're going to have lots of surveys and voting over the next few months, so you'll get a chance. And you can put on your index cards. All right. So we're going to take just a real quick 2 minutes. We want you to just talk amongst yourself. What do you think we can do to maintain our facilities in the near and the long term? So this is another time when you guys can talk amongst yourselves, or just put your ideas on the index cards and we'll collect them. So to maintain our facilities, what can we do?
Want me to do the mic thing?
No, I think we need to, because we got started a little late. We're doing okay, but we got started a little late. And we started late, which we did, but I don't know about the child care. Oh, they may still end at 1:15. No, you're just talking amongst yourselves. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we're gonna do another one on Tuesday night on Zoom. I don't know if she's Zoom, so then she might be able to adjust it here better. Yeah. sharing with each other?
Okay, folks.
Okay, thanks again for sharing again. Write down your thoughts on the index card. Now we're going to get into some background of the Facility Dream Team. And so as I said, the NLI report was done in 2018, 2019. In September of 2020, we launched our group. Of course, we launched it on Zoom. That was kind of in the middle of the first year of COVID. And from November of 2020 to January of 2021, we did a survey of the whole church that went out electronically. We reached out to people. We actually interviewed all of the staff individually. So we were reaching out as much as we could under the circumstances to get to talk to people. We gathered some information, and what we did is we realized that we as a team couldn't really go too much further without having the help of an architect. We needed somebody who kind of could say, hey, this is a good idea, that's, and again, just for input. None of us were architects, so we actually went to the church council in February of 2021, and we said, hey, here's what we're thinking. Here's what we found out that people love. Here's what we found out that people want to fix. And we had all kinds of ideas, but we didn't know if any of them were really reasonable. And we asked if we could have some funds and search for an architect. So from November of 2021 to April of 2021, we actually interviewed several architects, asked for bids, reviewed the bids, and we selected Kern's Architect. And if they sound familiar for some of you who have been around for a while, it's because they actually did the elevator. And we didn't always have an elevator. So they actually did the elevator back in the early, I think it was 2000s or so. They did the elevator. So we selected them. We worked with them to say, hey, here's who we are. Here's what we're looking at. And they have done some very high-level options and shared with us their initial thoughts. And that's why we're here, because we can't, as a team, make these decisions. This is going to be something that, as a congregation, we all need to come together, and not just the people in the room, but the people who aren't in the room. And we are doing another follow-up on Tuesday night. You'll receive a link. And we're going to do the same presentation for people who couldn't be here on Tuesday night at 7. So we really want to get the word out, and we're going to do a lot of talking. But that's kind of where we are and what got us here.
So when we first started out, through some surveys and through having discussions with a lot of folks, what seemed to rise amongst all the comments we had was 4 different areas, or 4 major priority areas that we asked the architect to look into. Such things as the flow between the buildings, the worship area and the other buildings, how we navigate through the buildings, and as Mary Kate said, 30% of our existing space is being used for just areas that aren't functional and really should have been designed for only 7%. Another area that we asked the architect to look into was a central admin area for people coming into the church off Sundays, and nice office spaces for everybody, a reception area, if you will. Another area was a spiritual area for all the ages. Certainly the education is a very important part of what we do here. And then take a look at the community engagement that the Calvary does, and how we would fulfill our mission with some flexible spaces. And there's a lot more in the fine print there. Entrances, security, parking lots, outside space, a batting cage.
Pool on the roof.
Just saying. I'm just saying. Be a little selfish here. Mary Kate, if you could.
Okay, so now we're going to go back to our Menti survey. We've talked about some of the things that we found you all shared. Again, the code is 5665-1474 if you haven't gotten there yet. And if you give me a minute. Our next survey, and for this one you can vote for as many as you'd like. And I know you may not be able to see it up here, but I'm going to read it to you. But just go to the second survey. As many of these that are important to you. You can vote for 2, 3, 1, however, 5, all 8.
It's not changing.
It's not changing?
Technology.
Oh, okay, wait, sorry, we have to reload.
It comes back to the first question.
Okay, sorry.
Skip question 9.
Sorry, it is, It told me it had to reload. It worked in practice. So you can think a minute about what is important to you.
It never fails. It worked perfectly when we did a dry run. Murphy's Law.
You know what, I just think our internet's not working. Oh, there we go.
Certainly. I think it's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Thank you. Or as we say in Boston, wicked awesome. Wicked awesome.
Okay. Is it working? Thank you for your patience. It's 566517. I'm sorry, 56651474. All right. So we'll just give you a minute or two. It's beautiful when technology works, right? All right, I'm going to give you 30 more seconds, so try to hit submit soon so we can get your vote in this tally.
What does improved security mean? Is the building not secure? Is that what that is? It's just a concern.
Well, I
think
I can take. You want me to take that one? I can take that one if you want. I believe, and Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's 19 different doors to this building, or entrances. Like when you go around the building, there's a lot of different entrances and exits, and so sometimes that makes it very hard to secure. Doors can get propped open. It's very hard to do security, and we also can't lock off like one building from the other. Like, all of the buildings flow together. There's no way, like, it would be nice if, like, when people come in to meet, we could just keep the meeting area open and have the sanctuary and other areas closed as we think should be. But we really can't keep certain areas secure at different times. The preschool has a very good security system. I think we should acknowledge that a few years ago they put in a high-tech, nice security system. But except for that one, we really don't have that secure access points between one building and another. Matthew,
That's exactly right. There's doors that are propped open and left open sometimes intentionally by people who want to re-enter the facilities at other times in which people are not here. We've had things go missing or moved, or all of that happen. We've had people staying in the facilities, including in the preschool area, before we did the security back there, and so that helped with that. But we've had a number of things like theft in the facilities, and people accessing it who were not given, who should not be on premises during those times. And so, like exactly what you said, we'd love to be able to go, the sanctuary is open, without it meaning everything is open. So it's that kind of stuff. Exactly what you said.
Okay.
Yes, not every week, but way more than once or twice. That's
Okay. So when we look at what 19% of you listed improved accessibility and flow, that's the highest, followed by energy efficient at 14%. At 13%, we have flexible meeting spaces and upgraded kitchen. And then at 11%, central admin with reception. 10% each is clear points of entrance and additional parking. And then at 9%, we have improved security. So again, good stuff for us to know what you're thinking about. And we are going to move on to the presentation again. So we would be remiss to talk about any kind of building or solutions without talking about the fact that we are going to have to fund these. Now, again, we have to know what we're going to do before we can fund anything or figure out how we're going to fund anything, and we don't know what we're going to do. All right, we honestly do not know. We have some options. We've got to think about them. And since we don't know what we're going to do, we can't really talk in details about funding, but we thought it was important to share with you kind of the big picture of our funding, which is actually really good. The great news is, as a church, we are financially really healthy. We are doing really well. We're bringing enough money to pay our bills. That's always a good thing. Not every church is as blessed as we are in that area, so we should be grateful for it. If we were to move on, and well, the other good thing is that we've done renovations before. We did the elevator. We were able to raise money and pay for that, and use some of our properties to help pay for that. We also have done the windows, which we got a grant for, and I think the air conditioning we got a grant for. So we actually, for both of those, which were pretty big projects, they were the windows in Skidmore and Harris, all of them replaced. We got grants for them, so it really didn't cost us anything. And we've been able to do little, jobs, AV stuff throughout the year. So we've managed some projects. So that's good history. So the way we would fund this, and again, we don't know what we're doing, we don't know the cost, but these are the options. We could have a capital campaign. The good news is we haven't had a capital campaign since the elevator, so it's been a long time since we've gone out and asked our congregation, can you please give us some money so that we can put it into our facilities? So we have that as option. We can take loans. I know for the elevator, I believe, Steve, we had to take some loans, so we had to do that at that time. We can draw from our assets, as I said, financially. We're, thanks to our stewards from the past and very generous people throughout a number of years, we have assets that we can lean on. We can ask for grants. There's a lot of organizations that if you do the ask and you do it right, they'll give you money. And I think especially the fact that our church is used so much by the community at different points, and I think our high was right before COVID, but I feel like we're getting back up there. We would have sometimes 19 different groups, not related to the church, but aligned with our mission, use this, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Love the Ball, all these things that the community would come and use our building for. 19 different groups in a week. That's pretty amazing. The other thing we want to talk about is we can do partnerships. Now this is a little bit different. Many of you may not have heard about this as an option, and it's something that I know many people on our team, I didn't know about it before I started working with this. So we want to explain it, just something for us to think about. So when you're partnering with somebody to build, what you're basically doing is you're finding somebody outside the congregation who can come in and kind of has some funds to help you develop. And perhaps you give them a long-term lease or make some deal with them. So here's the deal though. Churches do this for two reasons. Some churches do this because they're really going out of business. They can't meet their bills, they can't pay their property taxes. They have landed in Arlington, land's worth a lot. They want to keep some kind of a small presence, but they know that they can't keep on going for much longer. So there's an example of this over on Columbia Pike, where a church was really basically kind of dwindling, unfortunately, and they went to a developer and they negotiated, and basically the developer built some low-income housing. I think it's mixed now, but it's a percentage of low-income housing. There's an area for the church to meet, but basically they gave a lot to the developer because they didn't have the funds to keep going. The developer knew that. That is not our scenario. There's another scenario that kind of, I think, better meets our scenario. Any of you drive down Route 50 lately? Oh, okay, well. If you go down Route 50, just past 7 Corners, you go past on the left, there's a kind of a new big gray church. It's an Anglican church. Anybody? All right, so let me tell you the story about that. To the left of I think it's to the left of the church, there's some office buildings and a parking lot. That was actually built first by the church. Lots of doctor's offices there. So what they did is they had land, they partnered, built the doctor's offices, have the parking lot, then they built the church because they had the financial income to help build the church. And they were able to make a deal. And again, that is, we're not going to we don't know what we're going to do. But what we did say as a group, what we've established is there's two things. If we decided to partner with somebody, and again, it would take a long time us to even figure out what it would look like. But if we did, we would make sure that they align with our mission and vision. We're not going to bring in somebody that does not align and we didn't feel would be a good partner long-term with us. Bless you. The second thing is we want to maintain control and ownership of our property. We're not giving away the property. We would do something like a long-term lease or something where we would maintain the ownership and the control. So we're not the first scenario of a church that's going out of business, so we need a partner just so that we can maintain a small presence and they're going to really own us. We are the second example where we're going to establish something so that long-term it provides us income and the ability to move into the future. Does that make sense? I know that's a big, for me that was a big concept. It took a little while to sink in, so if you're kind of sitting here going, wow, that's weird, that's okay, because we're going to keep talking about it. But we just felt like since it's an option, we needed to share it so people could start thinking about it.
Anybody recognize that picture? Some might accuse me, have accused me of being around long enough to see that the first Calvary Church built. That's what it looked like. That's what it looked like. Why don't we go to the next one?
And I will say in 1923, they weren't in a building, they were in a tent. That first building was built in, I think, 1929, and it actually, it went along, like it started over in the prayer chapel, and it went that way. So if you like go through the parlor and you notice the windows, that's because that used to be the sanctuary. This
footprint is approximately the balcony.
Yeah, oh good, thank you. So the footprint's the balcony, so this part was added in 1965. I think it's just important that people kind of realize that we have evolved and done really different things throughout the year.
If you go to the next slide, it's a nice overhead. And like Mary Kay said, 100 years ago, we started in a tent. In 1929, the original sanctuary was built with a 1965 development, what you see today. Harris Hall, which has our church offices, meeting rooms, kitchen and stage, was added in 1940. And then Skidmore Hall for the children, youth, and preschool was added in 1958.
So that's
kind of gives you a good overhead view of where the original sanctuary was and where the buildings that were added.
All three, so different buildings, different decades, different elevations.
Yeah.
Different architects, different surveys.
Yeah.
Pastor Matthew, how many different levels?
14.
14 different levels.
They thought that was fun.
Yeah. All right, so now we're going to get to the fun part. We're going to share with you 4 options. And you can take notes, your reactions, and we're going to try to do another vote at the end. And these are high-level options. How many of you watch HGTV? You know, they're always like, oh, you could do the kitchen, you could do this, you could do that. So we're just going to describe what it could do and what we're looking for and whether it would meet what we're looking for. So there's 4 different options, and we're going to share them right now. So option A. So we call this one Fix the Flow, which is something that's come up a few times here. So if you notice, we have the list of things that we said originally that we came up with that people were looking for. In this Fix the Flow, the things that are grayed and crossed out, those are things that we needs or wants, they're really wants, that we would not be able to meet with option A. We would only be able to meet some of our needs with option A or our wants. So Fix the Flow, and this one is probably the hardest one to imagine, but I'm going to try to talk and get it right. The problem is 3 different buildings, and they were all kind of joined in different ways, and they're at different levels, and then we added an elevator, which is a blessing, because before we had the elevator, it was really difficult to get people from different floors and almost impossible. So, you know, we've had several different builds, and it created some of the different, 15 different levels. So we've all experienced where you kind of go out here through the parlor and then there's 3 stairs down and then you go up, but you don't really know where you're going because you can't see it. Or you can go down 3 stairs, it's like split level, then you go down another 3, but you really can't see where you're going there. You don't know, like you see a kitchen, you don't know, do I go left or right? So that's where we are today. So the Fix the Flow option is, we have the sanctuary, and we have Harris Hall, and if you noticed on the overhead, there's kind of some space in between there. We have where the elevator is, we have the parlor, and there's an alley. What they would basically do is they would take out that middle area that's kind of right now crazily adjoining all the buildings. And the best way I can tell you to envision it, have you ever been like in a hotel where you walk in and it's kind of like an atrium, and you can immediately see, oh, the elevators are there, and I can see the different levels, so I can see, oh, that's where I want to go. So basically you would walk in and they would rebuild it so that you would have stairs that would go to the different levels, you would have an elevator option, And the most important thing is you would really provide a place that you could see. We would have a little bit of space around those things that people could, we could have sofas, couch, people could use those for small meetings or coffee hour. But basically it would just kind of take out the middle area here and kind of put something in the middle of it that would allow you to get from area to area, front to back, more so that you can see it. Does that make sense? So that's fix the flow. It's really just keeping the 3 buildings and doing something in the middle. Yeah.
So just for clarification, when you say these are the things we wouldn't be able to do, is that based on a notional financial cap that you say that we would have to select some of them?
Good question. With, oh, okay. I should let you answer it then. We did the right answer. No, these are things with just this plan. What we would, taking this plan, we wouldn't be able to make it energy efficient, for instance, because the fact of the matter is we were keeping the 3 older buildings, which are not energy efficient. That doesn't mean we couldn't put like $1 gazillion into these buildings and make them energy efficient, but it's kind of like with that one plan, what we would really focus on is fixing the middle. Do you have a question, Jim?
When you said that take out, like completely take out the stuff, or you're just taking out the walls that?
Maybe like a sketch, since you work
Okay.
with architects, is there a sketch that would kind of show it?
Yeah.
So what I'm asking is, when you're saying you're going to take out the middle, is it just the walls that are separating that area, or just the entire
Yeah.
structure?
They actually, the architects have done some nominal sketches, but their advice to us right now is to let's talk about the concepts, and they will. And I know this is hard to do. They actually asked us not to share the sketches at this point, and we haven't. None of them really are in detail. But so they would, again, I think there's 2 designs. One, they take out more of the walls, and one they take out less. So there's different options, but at this point, the question is, does that make sense to you? And we're going to show all 4 options, and they're very high level. So at this point, our discussion is at the high level options. We promise you within a few months, we're going to meet again with the architects, and we need to take them back some information, and they need to do a little bit more. Then we'll be able to show you some details. And I know it's kind of hard when you can't see the pictures, but at this point, we don't have something that we can share. Yes?
I have a question. Would it butt up against these windows, or would we still have light in the sanctuary and start over there a little bit?
Again, that's a detail of what I'm envisioning, because as the architect said, it would be like an atrium. Atriums have the light flowing through, so I'm imagining that it would be glass so that you would still get the light. But we don't know all of the answers. We're going to do one more question because we want to get to the other 3 options, and then we can stay and answer questions. But I know that we need to keep our hour. Yes.
Assuming that our current elevator will stay.
It may or may not.
Not necessarily.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, we don't know. Yeah.
This is probably a good segue to go to the next one.
Okay, let's go to the next one. So again, as you can see, there's probably more questions than we have answers for, and that's okay. We're just high-level options. We're going to get there. Lots of discussions. Next one is option B.
Option B, same attributes underneath it. The only thing that we wouldn't fully achieve with option B is being completely energy efficient throughout the entire complex. So why not? So if you would, go back a couple slides to the overhead, and I think it'll help with the, okay. What this option does, keeps the sanctuary. Everything else goes away. Everything else goes away. We build from the ground up, improve parking, improve everything that's on the attribute list, including a lot of extras of wants, needs, and desires that everybody highlighted with us these last few months. Again, not 100% energy efficient, because this building, although some repairs and will be done, won't be 100% energy efficient. Does that help clear up maybe a little bit about this option?
Excuse me, why wouldn't the new buildings be energy efficient?
Why?
The new ones would be.
They'd be brand new buildings built to.
Only the sanctuary.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Only the sanctuary would
It's a good question.
be lacking just a little bit. It's a great question.
So again, we've got 2 options so far, high conceptual options. We've got 2 more to go. So the option C.
And something to consider now. These are just the first things to go on a piece of paper. In any design or engineering project, you have what they call a design spiral. We are still in the pre-planning stage for this effort. We got a long way to go. And if you folks are worried about, are we going to break ground in the next 6 months, it's going to be years. A lot of things have to be decided upon. And again, I go back to this open communication between everybody, all these types of questions. We want to answer all the questions and allay any concerns that you may have as we move forward.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So option C is to actually take all of the 3 buildings that are currently on the property and take them down and rebuild from the ground up. So we rebuild everything. And of course, since we're going to design and rebuild everything, we would get all of our needs and wants met because we would build them into the design. Does that make sense? So, yes? I would tell you personally, I would think that was something that we would definitely want to keep and would, that could, be a request of ours as we rebuild, that we somehow or another take them, keep them, and then put them in new build. Now, we have, again, I think, and that's what I've heard from our team, that's what we've heard from a lot of people, is whatever you do, like, don't lose the windows. We have to figure out what that would look like. Nancy?
I would love a small chapel.
A small chapel, okay. That's come up a couple of times. Please, and I'm going to write it down, but if you could also put it on one of the index cards, that would be wonderful. So if there's something that you're not hearing or seeing, put it on an index card, and we're going to collect them. So that's option C. Okay, so here's where we're going to get, before we get to option D, we have to talk about what we own on the block. As Hop said earlier, in the 1950s, 60s, I think the last one might have been bought in the 80s, the church was buying properties on the block in order to secure our future. It was a really smart move. Those properties we've been able to rent out. The blue blocks are properties that we own. One of the ones, there's actually 11 of them. One of them right on the corner over here is kind of a long strip and then a block. That's actually a garage, I believe. It's not a property. It's a garage behind the properties, but we own the garage. So we own those 11.
Streets for reference, I apologize.
Okay. So see where the yellow is? Like it looks like the yellow over here. So that's the corner, that's the church, so that's the corner of Grant and 23rd over in this far lower.
The yellow is the church.
Yes. Okay. So it's, the bottom is 23rd Street and then Grant is going up. Does that make sense? Okay. So most of our properties are on 23rd, but you'll see that we own the properties right around the church. So what that gives us, option D, the option is to kind of reimagine all of our properties. And this is really, again, like when we talk about these things, these are like really big thinking, long-term discussions and projects. If we were to reimagine the properties, we could start with the rental properties. All of those houses that we own are pretty old. And they're costing a lot. As I said with the numbers earlier, it's going to cost us $3 million over the next 25 years to just keep them and maintain them. Now we do have rental income coming in, but because they're not like top of the line, we haven't like put in high-end fixtures and things. Our rental income is good, but not as high as it could be. We could do something like where we own a single-family house. We could take it down and put up a new duplex so that we actually have 2 rentals on the same piece of land. So we could really say, okay, what can we do with these rental properties so that they will bring in the stream of income for the long term and actually, quite frankly, fix some of the problems or the challenges that we're having in maintaining the houses, because some of them they're just getting old to fix, okay? So we can do something with those properties. We can also, if we took down our church buildings, if we wanted to expand, there's that white church or white house on the corner here that's kind of in the middle of our parking lot. We could expand so that the church could sit differently and we wouldn't have the building there. So what option D, and there's, again, what this would look like, we have to decide. But it's that we really take and we say, what can we do for the long term that we have the best rental capabilities for our 11 units and that we also have the church property the way that we think it will serve us in the near term, but also very long into the future. So that's option D. Yes.
So, you know, with the new middle income housing missing, if that passes,
I
you
think it
could be able
passed.
to, it did pass, so we could be able to build 4 of them at, a property. So that's one option. But changing the zoning of the plot, the White House, that's a residential lot, right? I don't know if that can be changed.
Actually, that's one of the things the architect did. We're going to have to defer to the architect, but they are looking. We have a lot of flexibility on this block, but just because of the way it's permitted. But we would have to. You're right. We'd have to go to the county and say, here's what we want to do and get permission. But the architect says that that's something that they see as being doable if we choose to go that way. Does that make sense?
You're talking about the house that's in the middle of the parking lot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that one would be gone.
Okay.
So I mean,
I think the county might restrain its height.
Yeah.
no, remove that house.
Right, but when you're building something, even if they give you the permission, they're gonna have that height in line with the houses, like the 35 feet.
Okay, that's good to know. We need to.
Yeah.
Be a house of worship at that point.
Yeah, a bit of a follow-up. Are you going to have to go to the county for any permissions, and particularly if you start building up, or if you decide to put a garage dig a garage? And
Absolutely. Anything we decide to do, and the good news is that's one of the things that the architect has done is they have gone and looked at, what can we do, what can't we do, what permissions would we have to get. So they've already started that, because that's a big job in of itself. So while we don't know what we want to do, they can tell us as we go back and say, okay, these options seem to be of interest. They can say, oh, this is what you could do under that option. So they have started that legwork, which is something that we as a church couldn't do. We need their support. Does that make sense? And you had a question?
So I think it's important to know where we would worship and where the 19 different groups would be meeting when everything is torn down or partially torn down.
Right.
Are we going to go back to a tent?
Actually, I've got an army tent
Yeah.
in my shed.
That's
we can
a
set
great
up.
question, and again, a lot of detail. We got to know what we're going to do and how.
It is
Anything we do, if we do something really big, is going to be phased. Which the joy of that is we own several properties, so we could actually take some of the properties. If we were going to do something with these buildings and maybe move some things to, small meeting rooms or offices in some of the properties. So we actually have a lot of flexibility. But what other churches have done, and churches actually in this neighborhood, is they have, gone to community centers. I know one church was housed while it was rebuilding in Gunston. We would definitely try to find an option that would be in the neighborhood. We know that there's a desire to worship for many of you who live in the neighborhood close to home. So we would do that. We don't know the answer of the specifics, but that's what we would be looking for.
I'll make it quick, I'm sorry. I know we're also very high level, but I assume that, like, for me personally, I love the idea of keeping the sanctuary and then just everything being different. But it sounded like B and D, like, I just want to be sure somebody's thinking about a combination of B and D, because I swear I'm really loud.
But not for the
I
folks
don't
online.
need this. But essentially, because it seemed like an option B, that keeping the sanctuary wasn't also reimagining the rental properties. Does that make sense?
It does. And,
Okay.
And that's when, as we
And all of us who are sentimental, I feel like, might still be like, let's keep the sanctuary and bulldoze everything else. Because that's just my first reaction.
Yeah, that's why we're having.
Yes, I was married in this sanctuary, so I'm probably too sentimental. Just ignore me.
That's why we're
no,
having the discussion, because we don't know, it may not be, like a lot of things like this, it may not be A, B, C, or D when we get done. It may be Q. We may be a way long down and we finally found something that will work for us. This is the beginning of the discussion. So we do want to go back. We want to take one more survey. I know that this was fast and we gave you a lot of
Now
information.
you get to vote again. And
We want one more survey.
Again, this is just the beginning. We're trying to get your ideas, trying to create a conversation. And great questions and great sentiments have been offered up. This is a great start for us, and it helps us to navigate with the architect as we move into the future. So now you get to vote again. What are you thinking? A, B, C, or D, or something along that line. I mean, or none of the above.
Okay, give you another minute or two. And I'll leave it open so you can vote till the end, but okay, I don't see anything popping up. So actually, B and D, actually B, keep the sanctuary and do a seamless addition, followed by D, reimagine right now is leading, followed by A, fix the flow. Keep the sanctuary is taking a big lead, and then C is consolidate into one. So. Okay. So option B right now with this group seems to be very popular. We have just two more slides that we want to share about next steps, and then we will stay and answer more questions, but we promised to get you out within an hour, and we're trying to do that.
So next steps. The plan is, as I've already highlighted, to continue with this design spiral. And to do that, we need the feedback that we've received today and the feedback. We have another online presentation 2 days from now, and we'll get feedback from those folks as well. Suffice it to say, this is just the beginning, as Mary Kate said. Lots and lots of discussions with the congregation, with all the committees. There's so many wants, needs, and desires, it's just too hard to list them all. The dream team, the facilities dream team, if you run across a member, ask them, what do you got going? Because we haven't heard anything in a couple weeks. They can fill you in. But we will certainly continue. In fact, I think we have a meeting in 2 weeks with the architect, and to give him the feedback, or give them the feedback about what we've discovered here today. More focus group surveys. Once we get to a point where things are starting to gel, keep the sanctuary, refurbish the sanctuary, for instance, maybe, and just bulldoze everything else, new parking, then the more detailed drawings come about. That's part of the design spiral. And some cost estimates will start to come off the pages, and then we can start talking about how we're going to pay for whatever we want to do. But certainly, this is not the first and the last discussion. This is the first, but it won't be the last discussion we have. And I'll just close with, I get back to the secret of success that I first started out with, is effective and efficient communications, and certainly you folks have delivered today. But don't be shy. Coffee hour, before we gather for church services.
Softball games.
Softball games.
Get
Practice every
that way.
Wednesday night at 6 o'clock at Gunston, if you're interested. Anyhow, that's really the end of our presentation. So
that's it.
I think you picked up on the fact that we have an amazing facility dream team. We have some amazing people. You are in good hands with them, and they mean what they say. We're investigating. The architect will say one thing, and they'll be like, we want to look at this. We're still in the phase to be able to do that. I thank you so much. I'm going to close with a word of prayer, and like they said, we're here afterwards. So let us pray. Lord, we thank you for the blessing of facilities, of a place to gather, of a place to worship and praise you, to grow in our faith and to serve others. We ask, Lord, that we would look at facilities as a resource and ask that you would enable us to be good stewards of them. Enable us to facilitate